So I'm creating this video to guide you through this assignment so that you can use it as a reference point, because so that when you go through, I want you to code along this video. You follow each and every step, because this video will align you with most of these steps that you're supposed to be taking here. I believe that you could have done this by yourself, but again, you could get a lot of troubles, and also you might do something that I didn't expect. So I'm creating this so that you can follow along it, and in the future assignments, you know exactly what I will be expecting, right? So we shall be interpreting all these steps with you in this video so that you can follow them along and achieve whatever this assignment is supposed to be done. So basically, the main assignment was to create a simple express tracker, and this is a very simple project, something that you wouldn't even show up in your portfolio, but again, it will hasten, or rather make you understand better how to use these fundamentals of JavaScript. That is, how to use variables, data types, arrays, working with objects, creating functions and methods, and the DOM itself, including adding event listeners, selecting elements from the DOM, manipulating the contents of that element from the DOM. So basically, when you can do this project comfortably, then you're ready to move on to backend development with Node.js. You're ready to move on building project with React and all those things, because all of them are built around the same architecture. So it builds up your logical thinking, right? So with the folder structure, or rather the folder setup, I expected you to create an assignment one project within our main repository that we've been working with since the beginning. Then within that, you'll create an expense tracker, which will now be the main project that you'll be working on, the main folder that you'll be working on. So you'll open up the expense tracker separately as a separate project. Then within it, you'll create an index.html file, a simple JavaScript file, as well as a CSS file. Then you'll set up this simple HTML structure. So this is something that I won't go into. I've already created this, so it's something that I know you can create comfortably. So my main goal is just understanding the JavaScript that is expected within it. So basically, I have a project here that I've just set up. So this is something that the JavaScript has nothing. If I open up the JavaScript here, the JavaScript has nothing completely. Have a little bit of some stylings here, not that common of them, or that are not important. So we have the input. These are what the important things. We have the input here for the name, the input here for the amount, and the submit button, which basically is an input with the type submit within the form. Then down here, I have an empty UL element that is going to hold our expenses when you add them from the form. Then this one is going to give us the total to calculate the total. So if I open up this project right now on the live server, you can see that this is what it has, and it does nothing right now. When I click this button, it's just basically just reloading the form and nothing happens. So let's get on to the JavaScript itself. So the first step that you were supposed to do according to this document, according to the assignment, number one was to select all your elements that you need. The name input, the amount input, the submit button or the form element, the H3, as well as the UL element. So let's first select them all. So this step is selecting all the required elements using JavaScript, right? So we're going to pick on the amount input, for example, and this will be document.getElement by ID. And this here, we're going to select it by the ID of, let's just confirm the amount is amount. Let's copy that and then paste it here. Now let's copy this again and duplicate it. And instead of amount, this will be the name input. And this also here is the name. Then what else do we need to take? We've already taken this, you've already taken this. Then let's select this UL element as well as the H3 that are here. So you can see that these two do not have IDs. We can choose to give them IDs and select them by get element by ID. But again, you can also, because they're the only ones that are here, you have the UL element, you don't have anything else. You don't have any other UL element, you can use the query selector, right? So let's just use the query selector for that. So const UL element will be equal to document dot, we're going to use query selector, and you're selecting an element named UL, right? Then what else do we need? We need the H3. So const the total, let's just call it total element, and then this one will be document dot, let's just use get element by ID, simply because this is a h3, right? So you might have some other h3s within it. Right now we don't have any one here, but h3 is a very common one that you might have more than one within the same document, right? So that's why I've given it an ID, so that we can get it by an ID, but both of them will still work, right? These are just selectors, and you should be knowing which to use where, and you should be giving your reasons why you are using which one. So we have that one is remaining. We need now to select the form itself, right? This form. So you can decide to give it an ID, or because it's the only form that is there, we can decide to use the query selector. So you can just copy this query selector, then come here and paste it here. So this one is the form element, and then this is going to take in the form. So this is what was required of us. Let's just go back here. This is what was required of us to select all these inputs, which you've done already. So let's come back here. So after selecting, now we're being told that create an array to hold the expenses. Initialize it as an empty array. Each expense added by the user should be stored as an object containing two properties, name and amount. So what you need here is just creating a new array of expenses. That is all that we needed, and this is empty like that. This other expression tells you that each expense added by the user will be stored as a name and amount. So basically at the end of it all, this thing will look like this. We'll have the name here, and then it will have the amount like this. It will have something like that, right? And these ones will be coming from the user input. So right now let's just add code 1 so that you can work with it. Then we are later going to remove this so that it remains as an empty array. Okay, then the next thing is create a function called render expenses. So let's just create the function first. So function render expenses. You've created the function, so let's see what we are needed to do inside the function. Uses the for each method to loop through the expenses. So uses the for each. So the expenses array that we have dot for each expense here. Now let me tell you one trick about development, right? This for each here, it might look like it's having a very weird syntax. It's not that complicated, by the way, but you don't have to basically know how to write this by hand from your head, right? All you need to know is you should know where to use the for each. You're basically trying to loop through, right? So every time you come across a problem that requires you to use the for each and you've not mastered this syntax by head, you can just go back to the code that you've written before, copy it and replace the variables and work with that. And the more you keep copying from the code that you've written before, the more it sticks, and you see that going to copy is difficult because I can remember it and I can write it right now. So don't force yourself to understand these syntaxes, but know where you're supposed to use them and copy as much as you can. But again, if it reaches a point where you've copied a lot, it should stick in your head. Okay. So create a new li element. So you're supposed to create a new li element. So create a new li. So const new li, whatever that you can call it, new li element. Just replace this new li, and this will be equal to you're creating a new element, right? So we're going to use the DOM property of create element here, and you're creating a new li element. I think that's okay. Then now, what else? We've already created that li element. Add the expense name and amount as the text content inside the li, right? So now we have this. Let's create the new li dot text content. You can use inner HTML, inner text, whatever that you might want to use. And then within here now, we need to get the expense that you've looped through, because this is an object, has a name and amount. So this expense will be having a name and amount. You can decide to destructure it down here before you do anything, but you can decide also to use it as an object, no problem. So here we're going to say the expense name, right? So the expense is an object dot name like this. And then the amount for it, let's just give it a colon here, then add the amount here. So basically what I'm doing, I'm just constructing a string, so nothing fancy here. Nothing fancy here, so let's just do that. You've already done that. Now if you come here, you see it has not displayed it. There's one more step: append each li element to the ul element, right? So we need to append it here. So we need now to take in the parent, that is the ul element, copy that. Then we need to attach append child, so that is ul element dot append child, like this, and then we're going to give it the new li. So what this does, when you come back to the HTML here, you can see that this UL has nothing. It's supposed to be having some li elements within these tags, right? But right now it has nothing. So what the append child does, it takes in this parent and inserts the new elements within here. So that's what the append child actually does. So now if we come to our JavaScript here, or our project, you can see that it's supposed to be displaying it here. So let's see why it's not, because we are not calling this. Let's just call this so that we can see whether that is working. We're calling that there. So you can see that now we have hello 300, right? So let's proceed. The next step here was calculate the total amount of the expenses and update the text content of the H3 element. So remember, we selected the H3 element, so now we have to give it the, let's calculate the total first. Again, I'm going to use the array.reduce, which is the most ideal one to calculate totals, right? But again, I said, do not struggle to write it by head. You can basically just copy it. I'm writing it here because I've been writing it for a number of years. Right now it's sticking in my head. But in my second year of writing code, I always used to copy this from somewhere, right? So don't feel shy copying it from somewhere. The only thing that you shouldn't do is copy without understanding what's it doing, or just guessing. That's the worst thing that you can do to your career. So .reduce, and then this is going to take in two values, the accumulator as well as the item, which for this case is the expense that we are doing here. Then this is going to do something, and also it's going to take in the initial value that will be added up to this accumulator, right? So what this is going to do, it's going to be summing up. So it's going to return the accumulator plus the expense dot amount, like this. So this is what this is going to be doing. And then after doing that, let's save this into a variable. So const total will be equal to that. And now here, let's find this total element and then give it the content as the total. So here we can say dot inner HTML, inner text, inner whatever. So this one will be equal to, let's just do this, then we say total, and the total is the variable total. Save that. And again, this string concatenation, or whatever that you might call it, you should be very familiar with, because you'll be using this a lot of times. And it's basically just constructing a string, but you need to use variables inside the string, so that that's why you're using these backticks instead of single quotes or double quotes. Okay, so now if you come back here, you can see that now we have 300. So if you add up on, and we add another one here, for example, if you copy this and just paste it here, you can see that when you come back here, it will add up that to 600, and these ones will be displayed as 2, like that. So we're done with that step. We're done with that step. So let's go to the other step. So the other step will be adding an event listener to the form or the submit button. Since we've not used a button, we're going to add that one to the form itself. So an event listener to the form. So down here, we're going to say the form element that we selected. Where is it? The form element, here it is. So the form element dot add event listener, and we are listening to the submit event. When the form is submitted, what should happen? There's this callback function that is going to be fired. And because it's a form and we are doing a submission, we need to prevent the default, right? We've gone through this a couple of times, and you know why we need this one. If you don't have this, then it's going to auto reload the page when it's on, right? So we've already added that event listener. So let's save that and see. If you come here now, we're being told that retrieve the values that have been entered in the name and amount fields. So we're going to retrieve the values here. So you can say const entered amount will be equal to this amount input here dot value, right? That's how you get the values that have been entered, right? So let's copy this and paste it here, and this one will be the entered name, and this will be the name input dot value. So those are the two entered values, right? So after this, it's logical for you to do some validation, but the validation, I've put it here on task 2. For now, I just wanted you to achieve this. So we'll assume that we are good users and we're going to enter valid things. But ideally, every program should be validated. So the validation will come on the second task, which it's you who is going to do it by yourself. So let's just follow along this. But again, if you have problem with that also, you can just let me know. I'm going to create a video so that it can guide you through that. Then now you're being told that adds the new expense object. So it creates an object of the name and the amount that has been entered by the user, right? So let's just create here, so const new expense. Let's just call it that way. Expense will be equal to, it's an object and it has a name, and the name is the entered name, and it has an amount, and the amount is the entered amount, like that. Okay, so that is okay. The next thing we need to do here is we need to call the render expresses function and update the list. To update the list, adds the new expense object, so we need to add it to that array. So here we're going to add it to that array. Remember, the array was called expenses. We're going to use the .push method, and we're going to push in the new expense that has been created. So now our array will be having new elements here, right? So we can now remove all these so that we can now go back to the initial form where it's initialized as an empty array so that we can add them up. So we need now to call these render expresses here, because this will do exactly what it's supposed to do. So now I think this is ready. When you push that, it's going to add that. So let's try it out first, then we see whether we'll face any problem. So the amount will be like let's do what? Let's do something like pay fees. So that will be, let's say 300, add that. So you can see that it's adding it up here, pay fees 300. So but it's not clearing these fields, right? So let's clear these fields after we add the expenses. So clearing the fields, which again, it was a step here. I added it as a step here. So clear the input fields after successful addition. So it has added successfully, so we need to clear them. So we can clear them just here by taking this value and setting it back to the default of an empty string. And then this also here, copy this and also set it back as a default of empty string, right? Okay, so that is fine. Save that. Let's go back here now and try it again. We did pay fees, and then this one gave us, let's say 300, and if you do this, you can see that now these ones are being cleared after adding up this. But if you have a problem here, this is adding up something really funny. Let's try out something else. So let's add something like let's say buy furniture, and then this one will cost like 1,200. If we add this, we have two problems. Number one, it's this one here. This total is behaving really weird. You can see that it's appending these ones as strings, the amount as strings. So we need to convert this amount here as numbers at the point of which we take them here. So this amount, entered amount here, it comes as a string, right? And we need it as a number, right? So as we're constructing this object, let's convert this into a number. So we can do it using that, very quick and simple, right? Then now let's try it again and say buy milk, and then this will cost, let's say 100. Add that. Then let's do pay fees. This will cost, let's say 200. We expect now 300, right? Yeah, so 300. But now the problem is here. This is appending again. It's duplicating this, and the reason why it's done, we covered that when we are looking at the to-do list, right? So in this render expenses, before we render the new expenses, let's just reset these elements here because it will be appending them each and every time. So let's just do this inner HTML here will be equal to empty. And the reason why we are doing this is because the render expense, every time it's called, it's going to take in the new expenses that have been added, everything that is here, including the old ones, then create them again, right? So if they were already displayed on the DOM, they will be duplicated each and every time. That's why before we render, we know that the old and the new ones, all of them will be here. So we can clear that element, then now render them afresh, and then everything will be back as it was. So let's do that again. Now pay fees, and then this one is, let's say, 300. If you add that, pay fees 300, the total is 300. Let's say buy milk. And then let's say this one is 50, you expect 350, add that. There are 2 here, 350 here. I think that's everything that we needed. So let's confirm whether we have any other extra steps that we needed to perform. That was the last step. So you can see how simple that was. The only thing that you need to do now is the second task, that is adding the validation. So basically where we're going to add the validation is at the point where you took in the inputs here. Immediately after this, before you even do this, you'll add validation here. And the validation requires you to just check whether the person has entered a value in both, check whether the values they've entered is actually valid values, and if not, you can decide to come here and create a holder of the errors, right? And then if an error is occurring here, or if one of the validation is not met, you just add content to that element. That's all that you need to do. Yeah, so I think that's all. It was very simple as it is. So follow along this tutorial, try to read it through a couple of times, try to follow it along and see whether whether it will be of help. So in case you have any issue, just let me know, and we're going to handle these other sessions in our next class. Okay, bye bye.